talk about relief printing, and you can use a lot of different materials for your base or relief printing. I've got here some vinyl. This, as you can see, is a very soft blue pliable vinyl. This one's a little bit harder and has got a different surface on both sides. You need to be careful which side you use, as when this one is cut, it often leaves a round circular mark on one side, so you would need to use the other side. Then there's the more traditional lino, which is Hessian backed. What are the advantages of the different types of lino and vinyl? The thing about vinyl is it's easy to cut. The downside is that when you have finished your stroke of cutting, the pieces don't always detach from the vinyl block, so you may have to pull them off. With lino, it is harder to cut into, although if your lino is fresh from the supplier and it's quite bendable, also if it's warm, it does cut fairly easily. The plus side is that it detaches easily. The downside is if you're sitting opposite someone who's cutting lino, you'll find bits ping over into your workspace. What else? And also washing lino, that if the Hessian on the back gets wet, you'll find that when it dries a bit sort of bent and buckled, which makes it more difficult to work with. Right, so cutting. Health and safety is really important when you're cutting lino, and you need to always cut away from you, and also always have something that holds it firm. This is probably what I use most often, and it's a bench hook that's got a very low side here. I'm left-handed, so that's important for me. If I use this one, I've got a much higher bit here, but for any right-handed users, obviously that's not so much of a problem. Now the idea is that you rest it against the back and in the corner. It doesn't work if you've got it here because it's not resting against anything. So push it against here, and the bench hook holds on the edge of the table and everything stops in one place. I've got here a long-handled mushroom handled cutter. This is my favourite one, and that's what I'm going to start with. I've marked out my image already, and I cut along the line using the forefinger of my other hand to guide it, and also to regulate the pressure. Now you can see that this is still attached, and I have to just pull it off. I'm cutting away from me. I've also really careful that I don't put my finger in front and cut into it. Obviously you're going to cut into your finger, which isn't what you're aiming for. If you want to go around at a different angle, you can wedge it into the corner in that direction, which helps if you've got a more angled cut. For example, around here, so that you can follow it and always go away from you. The same thing of course applies here. You can wedge it in there, you can have it in the corner. Another way of doing it is to use a hand guard. That's what this is. It's a plastic guard. You hold the back and you wedge your piece of lino or vinyl in here. So as you cut against it, it holds it firm. With your other hand behind that red plastic lino guard, you can't cut this hand, it's fully protected. You can make a variety of different marks by using different cutters. There's a whole range of them in this type, but these are the cheapest ones, and you can get a set with one handle and 5 or 6 cutters that are interchangeable. They just fit in and out of the end. Some are V-shaped, some are U-shaped, and they work in exactly the same way. You can get a whole set quite inexpensively. Of course, once they get blunt, you need to throw away the blades, whereas with these you can resharpen them, and they're perhaps a more precision and more expensive equipment. When it comes to printing, it's good to have a registration sheet. This is something to help guide you so you know where you've put your lino and therefore where to put your paper, so the lino prints more or less in the middle. This is one I've already made, and it's set up with a size of lino that I frequently use. It's also been laminated, and I have a set of these ready for groups of students to use, and it's white clean. This is the size of lino that it matches, and when you've inked up your lino, you can place it on there, put your paper on the top to match exactly, and then you can print it. Now that's one I've already made. How do you actually make one if you haven't got one? What you can do is take a piece of paper. It needs to be really the same size or bigger than the print you're going to make. So if I use that size paper, put my block on, work out where the centre is. You might want to measure it precisely, I'm just doing it by eye, and draw around it. You've got to do it obviously before you put any ink on the block. It's a lot messier if you wait till then. Okay, so that's your registration sheet, and when you've inked up your lino, you'd put it on into the marks, and then your printing paper on the top, and it's the same size. That's how it works. I need to ink and print it now, and I'm using a relief ink. This one's a water washable relief ink, and it rinses off fairly easily with water, and white sometimes sticks a little more, and you may need to use a little bit of washing up liquid in with your water. So I've mixed here a pink, and I'm getting the right sound and the right consistency. There's a slight hissing, but it's not thick and sticky. It's just enough tack on it to print well. And here's my vinyl. What you want is 2 or 3 thin layers rather than one thick sticky one. Of course, what you're aiming for is to put the ink on the surface. You've cut away pieces, but you want the ink to stay on the surface and not go into the grooves. If you have got very, very thick ink, it will go into the grooves, and you're going to lose your design really. Ideally I'd do it just in one direction, but it is missing a couple of places, so I'm just going over those. Right, so if I place it onto the registration sheet that I prepared just a little earlier, I'm going to take my gloves off because I want clean hands to handle the paper. And I could print it in a number of different ways. I'm going to look today particularly at printing by hand, and a lot of people use a wooden spoon, which is one of the things I've got here. I've also got a barren. This has got a nylon mesh on the bottom, and a good strong handle. And then this is a smaller one with a soft coating on the bottom, which is particularly important if you're going to use oriental paper, which is quite thin. So I'm putting the printing paper on the top, smoothing it on. If the paper were very thin, you could even print it with your hands. This is the Baron, and I'm holding the paper still so it doesn't move around, and I'm trying to put the pressure down through my shoulder. It's not just a case of kind of lightly doing it on top. You need to put the pressure down through the shoulder, but hold the paper so that it doesn't move around. It's almost like an ironing movement, really. You're sort of flattening and smoothing and putting the pressure on through the paper. Now I'm going to have a look and just see how it's going. Yeah, it's not looking too bad. This is the other thing you can use, and use it this way up, and you can do a circular motion. This of course is the cheapest, and many would say the best. This is the other one. On this kind of paper, it's perhaps not the best. It's a little too soft. Now I'm going to have another look, see what I've got. I think probably this will be okay. Yeah, it's not perfect. I've got a couple of white marks down here, and I think that's because there's a couple of small lumps of something in the ink at the moment, but it's pretty good. You'll notice if you look at the plate and you look at the print that the lettering is back to front on the vinyl. This is to make sure it prints the right way round on the paper. It's a common mistake for people starting out in printmaking, that they draw their lettering the right way round on the block, they painstakingly cut it, and then are surprised when it prints the wrong way round. So that is something to plan for right at the start. Another way to print your vinyl is through a large etching press like this one. I've put it on the registration sheet already, and I'm putting the paper on top. Now notice that this and this is on the press. It's a long strip of lino. There's nothing special about it, but it is longer than the paper and the vinyl here. So it starts this side of the vinyl and it finishes that side of the vinyl. What it does is it helps the metal roller of the press climb to the height that the lino is, and then runs along. It gives it that extra support. It runs along the lino runners at the same time it runs over the vinyl or lino. If you don't have the runners there, what can happen is that the roller nudges the vinyl or lino and puts everything awry across the press. You can end up with half of your paper moved right across like that. Obviously it's not what you're aiming for. So you put it in, you have the runners either side. As usual, you protect your blankets, then you put the blankets down. And then when you've got it smooth, you run it through the press.
Go.
This is another way of printing your lino and vinyl prints. It's a relief press, and it works with a screw action, tightening the screw and untightening it to get the vinyl back out. You can see I've put the registration sheet under here with the vinyl on it, and you place your paper on the top as before, or if you think you can do it outside of the press, you could put it all together first and put the whole sandwich in. you need a firm board at the bottom to do that. So when you've done that, you turn it clockwise to bring the top down. And so you get down to the bottom, and when it's meeting here at the bottom, you can apply the pressure to the print. Right, so this is the bit where you're actually printing, and I've done quite a firm pressure on it, and it's now ready to turn back up and take the print out. And then you can take out your whole sandwich or peel it up as you like, and you've got your print. There's your